Hello, we are live, and unfortunately, I didn't have enough time to grab the link and stick it into the event, but I'm so happy you guys have all joined me. Just give me 1 second and make sure people can find us. I did manage to get this event registered through the Social Dilemma today, so I thought that was pretty cool. Some
nice
resources and stuff. Okay. Thank you, everyone who is joining us. It looks like we've got some people here already. Let's see what happens here. Adam here is saying hi. Catherine is not going to be joining us. She is under the weather, unfortunately, so needs to take some time to recover. Ooh, my friend Sam. Haven't seen him in forever. What a group from Melina. That's awesome. I am just okay. All right, it's in the event. We could go ahead and get started. Everyone joining us, if you have comments, thoughts, questions you'd like to pose to the group, please put them, send them to us. We're live on LinkedIn and YouTube. So we're getting all of those comments in the feed so that we can answer any questions or share any thoughts to their larger audience. So I am pleased to have this amazing group of humans join me. And I'm just going to go around and have everyone just tell us who you are, what your background is, to sort of give some context into why you feel how you feel about the social dilemma, and then just like your first general impressions. For me, I'll just go first since I'm the host. I'm Jen. You should know me if you're on this event because it's my LinkedIn profile. But I'm a mom. I'm 44 years old. I am from New York, but I have parents who are retired who, have a different Google feed than I do, which is a real problem sometimes. And then my kids are 6 and 9. And while my daughter doesn't have a phone, she's already asked for one. And at what age is she going to get one? And what is social media going to look like when she does? So that's why this topic is sort of important to me. Christine, share with us.
Yeah, so Christine Whitehead, I joined the discussion today because really I don't have kids, but my parents are retired and they spend a ton of time because they have nothing else to do, on social media. And I'm also former military. And so there are a lot of things that, people knowing everything that's going on in your life and kind of feeling like people are always watching you. So for me, it really sparks a lot of those memories of not really having a private life. And I really pride myself on being a fairly private person. But every time I have a conversation and then all of a sudden an ad pops up on some social media, or if I'm Google searching, I've actually watched the movie 3 times. The first time I watched it by myself. The second time I watched it, to be perfectly frank with everyone, because my husband would not have watched it had I not watched it a second time. And then I watched it for the 3rd time this past weekend, just because I wanted the context to be extremely fresh in my head. And I left, social media like Facebook and several things like that about 6 years ago, because I was just, it was literally taking up all of my free time and I wasn't having actual conversations with people. And that is a really big problem for me. I think that social media is really changing the landscape of human nature. And it's really scary that we don't have the type of conversations that we used to have with people. And I'm really excited about the conversation today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. Lydia, you're up.
Hi, I'm Lydia Sugarman, and I live in San Francisco. I lived in New York for a lot of years and grew up in Kentucky on a farm. And my kids are grown, and none of them are they're not that into social media, that just the bare minimum. But my granddaughter is supposedly an influencer on Roblox, and she's 10. And I moved over to, well, I was selling syndicated television programming in the early to mid 90s, and then moved to the internet, or new media as we called it then. And so watching The Social Dilemma, it was like, it's not anything I haven't heard before, and not anything that I didn't already know, and that I hadn't already reconciled, and that I don't already basically think about nearly every day, because marketing technology for 20 years, and it's all about A/B and personalization, and using the data that you capture. Using social media, you give them as much as you choose, I think. I mean, there are people that just bare their souls and bare their entire lives on social media. And then there are others who use it very judiciously, and just to stay in touch with friends and family they may have connected with for the first time after years and years. So, but my attitude in the beginning was, I'm just going to be me. My name is Lydia Sugarman. That's who I am everywhere online. While I had a lot of friends, particularly programmers, who were creating all these fake personas, and thinking that they were going to game the system. And I was like, you might as well just be you. It's because they are going to know anyway. And it's easier if you've only, it's like it's easy when you tell the truth. You've only got one story to keep track of. So I have really mixed feelings and a lot of opinions about the documentary itself, and about how to manage your life around social media.
Well, thanks for sharing. David, share with us who you are and what your thoughts are, your initial feelings.
Absolutely. So I'm an information security specialist. I run HailBytes, an information security firm just outside of DC. And then I also work as the virtual chief information security officer for a healthcare company down in Tennessee. So my thoughts on the film, it's a lot of the same kind of information that I've been teaching to a lot of my clients in terms of reducing your footprint online, in terms of reducing I know somebody was saying, I think it was Justin was saying just a moment ago, like how much it has your hooks in it, how much money is going in, how much time is spent and invested in making these things very, very addictive and gamifying them so that you use them more and more. So it's something I'm very cognizant of. And I loved seeing Netflix sponsor this. I loved seeing kind of this awareness being brought to it, and didn't necessarily agree with all the suggestions out of the documentary. But I think it is critical that we're aware of how our data is being used, both for us and how it's being used against us, or being used in a neutral fashion to benefit somebody else. I think it's a conversation that's very, very important to have.
Yeah, and those are some great points. I think we need to make sure that we spend some time digging into the opinions that differ from the movie, and where, those beliefs are sort of, there's a different path, right? So I definitely want to spend some time on that tonight. So Travis, you're up.
All right, everything's working.
Yeah, we hear you. We don't hear you very loudly, but I don't know if you can increase the volume.
I'm connected to my microphone, but I'm wondering.
You're good
Test.
now. Much better.
Is this better?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Hi everyone. I'm Travis. So by day, I sell testing, inspection, certification services, keeping companies safe and helping companies improve their operations, and fun similar to David. And by night, I help people build communities. And so I think one of the reasons that I'm here tonight is to kind of share, one, just a lot of the learnings, similar to a lot of people here. The topic of the discussion tonight is nothing new to most of us. I think what's interesting to me is how much it's surprising other people and everyone else's reactions. And so having the pleasure of, interviewing Bailey, who was in the documentary, and also spending a lot of time, figuring out, what's the internet doing to me, right? Like, why is it that I feel weird that we're all on screens and there's also 2 other screens right in front of me? And actually on this table, there's like 6 screens literally on my desk. So explaining to people kind of some of the things that I've done to just learn, hey, what's happening, right? So keeping track of, what's my screen time like, right? Like being able to say I spent, 8 to 9 hours last week on my phone, and out of that, 5 of that was on Spotify and the other 6 was on YouTube, right? But then even going a level deeper, is there a way for me to flip that and say, where is my energy going digitally, and who's actually going to spit that back to me and tell me where I can optimize my own life? And so I've shared this with a bunch of people probably on the call here in the group tonight. But I have a way of tracking and seeing okay, what happened today? What day was it? How did I feel? What emotions went on? And so it's how do I unplug, but also how do I use technology to figure out a way to optimize my life? And instead of saying oh, it's taken over, I'm addicted to LinkedIn, I'm addicted to Instagram, I'm addicted to Facebook. It's no, Facebook just helps you stay connected to people. And no, LinkedIn just helps you do your job better, right? So just changing how you think about some of these things. And I'm hopefully leaving a better mark for people to kind of use these social tools as a way to connect versus something that they're addicted to and have to go to rehab for. So yeah, that's me.
Yeah, definitely. There are definitely different levels of addiction, right? And what addiction really means and how it takes over your life. That's really interesting. So Jonathan, you are up.
All right. I spent the last 10 years in sales, strategy, and leadership roles, mostly in marketing technology. So when I got off of MySpace and didn't get onto Facebook, I saw this coming because we were selling machine learning and algorithms before they started calling it AI. And at least our B2B clients at the time were smart enough to ask, well, what's going on in the black box? I want to know. I want control over those algorithms because I don't trust your technology. And then somewhere early last decade, B2C folks just didn't care anymore. And, that was, knowing going in what was going on, that was my biggest takeaway from the movie. And I just felt like it was kind of like a cross between Vegas, Don Draper's quote that you didn't know what love was until we defined it for you, and the settling of the Wild West. And all of those things are fine because they're American. But I think the biggest casualty of the social dilemma is that people just don't know. And the people in charge of those billion-dollar businesses don't give a rat's ass. So I'm gonna take a slightly, I guess, more negative view on the world than Travis. But looking forward to the conversation and maybe finding ways to find the positives in social media because they are out there. But man, it's a mess.
Yeah.
Isn't that what negative plus positive equals good, right?
Hopefully it's not something times 0.
Absolutely. We have some great comments here. I just want to touch on them for a second before moving on to Chantel. JD here says tools versus vice. That wasn't really addressed in the movie, which I think was a shame. I want to go back to a flip phone and a clipboard. it wasn't addressed in the movie, but there was a podcast that we'll have to share that was really interesting. Maybe Lydia can talk about it a little bit. I listened to it, but it really brought into focus the idea of time management, and that, if you use social media as a tool, then it's a tool and not necessarily an addiction. Lydia, do you want to touch on that for a second before we move on to Chantel? Did you have anything to add?
Let's wait and save it for the general discussion here and get introductions.
Yeah, no, that sounds perfect. Chantel.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chantel. I'm a marketing professional. I've been in marketing for over a decade. So I have worked closely with social media for many years, both on a personal level and then helping different brands manage their presence as well. So I definitely have a love-hate relationship. When you work in marketing and social media is part of your job, it gets a little bit harder to create a defined boundary. It gets very hard to unplug because it's part of your job. You need to constantly be monitoring what's going on in broader conversations, what's going on with the brand. You could unplug and then a whole fire gets set off, and then you're going to be the one who's held accountable for that. So I think that for marketing professionals, for people who are building brands online and using those tools in that way, there are a lot of challenges there that make it much harder to fight that constant pull to be online and be checking the apps all day. I do think that we have more control than we like to think. Anything can be addictive. Anything can be used for good as well as evil. Our smartphones, our computers in general, very addictive. So even if you weren't on your phone on social media apps, would you not be using your smartphone at all? Or because I see a lot of people who are constantly staring down at their phone, whether they're texting, using whatever app, all of your apps, your whole life is on your phone. So there's a broader conversation here where I think that the line is becoming more blurred between man and machine, even with the biotechnology that we're seeing, where technology is being embedded into our actual bodies. So I don't know. I think that it just needs to be a conversation that we start having now. How can we protect the more vulnerable people in society? How can we protect ourselves and encourage clear-cut boundaries and safeguards for our mental health?
Yeah, no, 100%. I'm sorry. JD's comment completely distracted me right there at the end. I'm playing Snake a la Nokia 6020. Yeah. So yeah, no, I think you make some really excellent points. But let's get into the questions. We have some questions that, were sort of suggested by the Social Dilemma, as this was a registered event through them, just to have, some of the resources that they provide. Oh, we've got Michelle. She came back. So let's do Michelle. Michelle, we lost you there for a second.
Should I do an angry post about Altice, or should I just go right into my? Sorry, Altice. Well, we're talking about the internet and whatnot, but
Yeah.
So I apologize for that little timeout. So I'm Michelle Hecht. I am a mother of two boys, 10 and 15. I've been in corporate sales for about 20 years now, always in the field. And the only reason I bring that up is that I feel that I've had a lot of exposure to so much more, I guess, than being in a controlled environment, like working in an office with a team. So the more people that you talk to and the more exposure that you get to all different people, different backgrounds, socioeconomic status, cultures, race, you get a really good perspective on life, on things. And I think that's grounded me and also growing up in New York City, as the accent suggests. So when you grow up in that type of environment, and as you get older and the type of choices you make, the job that you have, the values that you create, the more and more technology kept, upping the ante in every respect. By the time things really exploded and I got on Facebook, and I'm sure all of us were like, wow, look at all these incredible things going on, and cell phones and the internet and all these different platforms and social media. So of course the novelty of it in the beginning is like, oh my God, this is going to change the game in every respect. And then, as the documentary suggests, it went in ways that they never planned it to go in. For example, the like button, but we'll get into that later. My point is that my perspective on it has changed. It's shifted so drastically from when I started. And I also, like Jonathan was mentioning, that like saw things coming. I saw this coming, not all of it. The only piece that I saw coming was the fact that people were getting sucked into it, and there were things going on Facebook, and the need to constantly get on and check and like and respond and reciprocate if somebody wishes you a happy birthday or loves a picture of your child or congratulates you on a new job or whatever. I saw that start. And when I turned 40, which was 5 years ago, the first thing I decided to do was do something that felt more genuine. I wanted to hold on to something that wasn't curated and forced and fake. So what I thought would be a cleanse 5 years ago for a month from Facebook, it's now been 5.5 years. So that was the beginning of my quest. Thank you, David. Thank you, Travis. And it was hard at first. And the crazy thing is, I knew there was a problem when I started feeling like I was going through some sort of withdrawal. So, like, oh my God, I have to get back. And then watching this documentary, I was like, you see, and it's not just Facebook, it's all these other apps and just these other platforms, because there's a lot more going on behind the scenes than we really know. And if I didn't have the background in medicine, I've been in pharma for so many years, and I didn't learn all these things, I probably wouldn't have put the pieces together as quickly as I did. And I think all of us can put the pieces together, but I took it a step further. And, that's why I was talking about it, when these posts were going around last month. That's why I got so deeply involved and invested in the conversation, because I feel strongly about it. So Jen, thank you for putting this together. And I'm so excited that we're all here to talk about this, because whether we're parents or not, just as human beings evolving and using more and more of technology, we need to be equipped, and we need to be educated, and we need to be making decisions that are good for ourselves and our families and each other if we're going to evolve and move forward the way that we want to.
Yeah, no, 100%. And thank you for sharing that. I mean, a lot of what you said really resonated with me. Before, we went live, you were telling me I had a glow, right? And that, that I looked better than the last time you saw me. And it, my first thought was, I was off social media for like a whole week in the mountains in Virginia, and having that time away at first, while it was difficult, I was able to leave it behind. And as soon as I did, things were like brighter and the sky was bluer. And so it did impact me to have that digital break and then come back and be like, okay, I don't need this so much. I could spend a little less time, more time away. And, we're going to get into the questions, but this first question about the impact, right? The first question is, were there particular moments in the film that really resonated with you? And one of the things for me, and I'll open it up to you guys, but the reason why this particular topic is so important to me is because of my parents. And it's that idea that if they Google something and I Google something, that we have two different realities based on our beliefs and what we research and what we look at and the things we like. And for me, that's created some real difficulties, and it extends beyond me to my children as my parents help out with my kids, and my kids have my parents in their lives so often that a lot of that just gets, part of the conversation. So this, is pretty impactful to me personally. But I'd love to open it up to everybody. What parts of the film resonated with you, and what parts were you concerned about or just sort of disagreed with? Opening it up to anyone who wants to start.
I'll start. There were a couple things that really resonated with me. That one, the fact that there was a quote in the film that came up on the screen about there are two industries in the world, right? And that call people users, not something else, and that's drug users, and the drug people, the people that are in that environment who are using drugs and doing all those things, and people that are using social media, all these free platforms. They're not free. We're the product, and that hit home for me, because I don't want to be a product. I'm a human being, and that right there is just like one sentence that really struck with me. And it bothered me more than anything. And the funny thing, and when my husband watched it with me, he even became extremely agitated when that statement came up, because he was like, wow, God, that, like, we don't use drugs. We've never used drugs. Like that's, why would you say something like that? But it's really, and maybe there are other industries that call their people users, but these are two of the biggest. And there are a lot of people who are becoming influential, that are in this industry, that are in social media, that are running these companies, that are deciding and influencing all of us and all of our decisions. And that's huge. And I have a problem with that.
Yeah, that really bothered me too, especially as a member in, many communities. It made me think of, as I look at these communities, are they looking at me as a user? And are they now selling me? And if they are selling me, do I really align with all those values that they have? It's just like how that.
But I think that's where the choice comes in, right? We can choose to no longer visit a site, or no longer, partake in whatever social media platform that you're feeling extremely overwhelmed by. I mean, I left Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I think I have like 9 people I follow on Twitter. And I hardly ever go on there. I never tweet anything. I'm on Instagram, but it's literally only to stay connected with the family that I have that's all across the country. I don't have any family, and I have no friends like locally to where I live, because I've only moved here recently, and then COVID happened. So haven't really had a chance to branch out and meet a lot of people outside. But I have met a lot of people online, which has been amazing. But it was just huge for me. But I'm making a choice now, and I'm making decisions based on that knowledge that I now have. And I've had some of it for a while, but I'm making better decisions because of that, because I'm deciding who gets to use me as a commodity instead of them choosing.
That's amazing. And I agree. I mean, I'm making some choices as well that I hadn't made previously. So did anyone else want to share what resonated with them or what didn't resonate with them and they had concerns about?
I think there was way too much emphasis and credit given to quote unquote algorithms. And yeah, they're powerful. They're designed to, I'm going to be kind of a devil's advocate, I think, today, because, the algorithms are designed to deliver the kind of information that you're looking for. And yeah, they get smarter and they get to know you. And again, it's like, how much of yourself do you choose to reveal? And there's a reason why there's an incognito option on browsers, because if you don't want to be followed, if you don't want to be tracked, then you can do that, or you can use DuckDuckGo. But the thing that bothered me, there were a lot of things that bothered me about it, but nobody really talked about the people at the top of these companies and their what to me, their very clear agendas. When you have somebody like Mark, I mean, we know Mark Zuckerberg is an asshole. He's always been an asshole. There's movies that prove that, about his being an asshole. And that hasn't changed. And when you read in the news that he's gone and had private dinners at the White House, Peter Thiel is sitting on his board, and maybe you know who Peter Thiel is, maybe you don't, but he's a very outspoken libertarian. His company Palantir is one of the most mysterious companies in Silicon Valley, and they're in the business of gathering data for the government, among other clients. And then you see how Facebook, how they censor their very what I want to say, customized censorship of information that's served, and who's blocked and who's not blocked, and most people don't. I don't think the general public is aware of all of this necessarily, and that kind of manipulation wasn't really given enough time in the Social Dilemma.
So I'd like to add on to that too. I ran an experiment with one other engineer back in 2018, where basically we put together a very very simple algorithm. If you like to content was put into rough categories, sent through Chrome primarily through notifications. If you liked the content, all it did was add basically a tick for that genre of content to the user in a database. And so we set up this experiment, and in the first month, we got a couple users, and not really too much happened. We got some data in there, and we saw over the course of about 11 months that go from nothing, like no interaction really of any sort, to a tremendous amount of money with a very simple algorithm, like literally just showing folks a couple different kinds of content, seeing what they clicked on, what they engaged with, and then just taking note of that. And over the course of about 11 months, just using basically money from the platform, from sending people to certain types of content that they liked, like one of the folks that we partnered with a few months in was Netflix. So if they liked video streaming content, a couple days later, we'd send them a notification about Netflix. And if they signed up, we'd get paid for that. Over the course of 11 months, with two people working on this, very, very little in the way of technical resources, we went from $0 to $13 million in sales with zero external funding, with zero, just so little. And the piece that Lydia was just talking on, when you're looking at the folks who are at the tops of these organizations, the algorithm doesn't necessarily have to be super complicated. But when you look at, two people who can make a very, very substantial amount of money for two people in such a small amount of time, when you look at these companies like Facebook, like Twitter, who are, I assume, doing much more complicated things behind the scenes in terms of showing you content that you're going to engage with, like the amount of money at stake, the amount of power in terms of guiding folks is insane. Like absolutely just kind of, it's difficult to conceptualize.
I 100% agree with that. And the volume and the control that they have over all of that. And I think that's really what I think about my problem with it. It is about the control, that they completely can control that my feed looks different than my parents and how that filters down through my family, right? So yeah, I think that's 100%. We have some comments that people have shared that, you know, they agree. Janet here says, who controls the conversation? I mean, we've got some comments about Facebook. Facebook is like the shadiest salesperson ever. I don't know. I'm a big fan of LinkedIn. My LinkedIn Live, I'm a big fan of that. So LinkedIn, you're good. We're not talking about you.
Good CYA. Good
Had to
CYA.
throw in that disclaimer somewhere because I don't want, you know.
I think,
It's up to every individual. Sorry, Jonathan.
I was just gonna say, I think
It's up to every individual to be responsible for the things that they're doing online.
but I think to Lydia's point, it wasn't, you know, just any one thing, and there were pieces missing from it. The conclusion of the movie, they try to wrap it all back together, but they really don't take you from Section 230, 1996, all the way through to us being in the most partisan condition we've been in decades, all because of 4 major, billion-dollar social companies that run like large countries around the planet with dictators at the helm. And I love the twisting the dials. I mean, they actually, the monetization guy from Facebook's like, twist the dials. You want to make more money in Korea today? Let's make some more money in Korea. You want to double the users in South Carolina? Let's double the users in South Carolina. And it's not any one thing in there from that blank check they got in 96 to do whatever the hell they wanted online without any repercussions. It was all the pieces in there. The gamification, the making it like a casino, the preying on people's social and psychological conditions, the complete hiding of the algorithms, the 28-page give up your life sign up sheets that you have to do. All of those pieces collectively, if you can't look at the 4 CEOs of those companies and go, you're a bunch of assholes, and the level below you and the level below you, all the way down to those 2 programmers in a room, they're like, let's make the like button today. Let's A/B test that on 10,000 people. Oh, that works really well. Boom. Probably 2 white guys in the Valley pounding on it, and I think they said this in the movie, or if I heard it somewhere else, but now, that affects 2.6 billion people. It's not just, some company effing around with a handful of people or selling black box AI to businesses to help them get more leads in their pipeline. There's repercussions that stacked up over 2 decades, 2.5 decades, that collectively, if you think about it, it's all wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that someone had mentioned that we have an element of choice in all of this. It's not so straightforward as just being confined to social media and the things we can see. A lot of other things are going on. Data is very, it's a hot commodity these days. There's a lot of different ways and channels that they're using to gather data that go beyond social media. So if you've been paying attention to the headlines beyond just this documentary, it's pretty scary. Even LinkedIn, Jen, I know you're a fan, and I'm not going to go too far because I'm also a heavy user of all of the platforms. So I don't want anybody messing with my engagement rates. But LinkedIn even had a scandal where they were going into people's notes and could see what you were saving and putting into your notes documents. Facebook had a thing where they were using the audio and the camera without people's knowledge. Samsung had a thing where their TVs were recording people without their knowledge, smart TVs. So, I mean, Amazon is putting out, Facebook, Amazon have these video smart home devices that you can put in your home, and no one really knows. Can you really tell if they're turning on without your knowledge? And I think there was something that came out where the Echo was recording constantly and saving that audio. So everything around you, all the tech, all the smart stuff that we're getting, every device that's smart and is connected, anything that connects to the internet is collecting data on you, whether you know it or not. And we don't know where that data is going, what it's being used for. So, I mean, you could log off of social media if you want. There's a whole ecosystem of data collection that's going on around us that there's no way to opt out. Not to scare
And it's
anybody
worth
or make it
noting-
sound really doom.
Well,
Sorry,
I
to
think
be
it
Chantel,
would be
pessimist.
scary.
In Chantel,
I'm sorry.
oh, sorry. on Internet of Things devices, on smart devices, they are historically extremely insecure. So there have been a whole bunch of debacles, like Chantel was saying, like with the Echo, where it was listening in. But they're also very insecure devices, and they don't have a good way to patch them, to fix them. So we see so many breaches, so many data breaches around Internet of Things devices and smart devices. Something else to be aware of.
And really quickly, someone had mentioned you could use DuckDuckGo or go incognito. Some of our phones run on Android, Google, Android. I mean, Google makes some of our phones. They're collecting stuff. It's just the way it goes.
You know, it is what it is. It's whether you choose to be manipulated or not, whether you choose to engage or not. And you know, the word addiction got thrown around a lot in the movie. It's been mentioned multiple times in this discussion, and I have the link queued up for the interview with Nir Eyal, who was interviewed for 3 hours for this movie, and they chose not to use any of the footage because it didn't fit the agenda for what they were doing, their message in The Social Dilemma. He's in the credits, and he says there's no such thing as digital addiction. It's made up, and the reason he says that is that we do the things we do. We get attached to things the way we do because they trigger internal triggers, and I have to use my notes. And all of the internal triggers, all of our internal triggers are always negative. So we're always looking for a way to escape that discomfort.
I wanted to add something to what you're saying, Lydia, because what you're pointing out is so important. If there was no such thing as addiction to social media and to all of this, why did the healthcare system come up with ICD-9 codes, CPT codes, that treatment codes that they have to put on claims to submit to healthcare companies, to insurance companies to get reimbursed? Those are new diagnoses that have been created because of all the emerging cases of addiction. And so now there are codes specifically for addiction and for technology addiction after people are examined by doctors. Oh no! I support everything you're saying. I just think it's wild that we wouldn't let that footage on.
You know, either, and their codes, because psychiatrists. You know, I mean, how many? It's like if we could still be having lobotomies, if if we really took everything that psychiatrists decide is a great treatment, and we've been internal triggers, distractions. Plato talked about distractions and talked about that we seek out for managing our emotional pain or discomfort. So he said something that I really liked in the interview. Time management is pain management. So yeah.
Well,
I don't want to necessarily. Just let me get this one point out. Like, I agree about the concept of time management and that social media is a choice, right? What I don't agree with is the idea that that it's okay for everyone, right? We as adults can make a choice, but where it becomes polarization and you're going to a simple Google field and there's one reality for someone who likes this stuff and there's another reality for people who like this stuff, that's a problem. That's a problem for all of society. That's a big problem. The second thing for me as a parent is there's this peer pressure for my daughter who already wants a phone, right? And we don't let children go in bars, right, and order liquor because they're too young. And so while my daughter wants a phone, she should not have one, just like she should not go to the bar. And it's that sort of thing because they don't have the EQ and emotional, like, I've lost the word, but that intelligence to make those choices intelligently at that age. That's why they can go to bars. So there's gotta be some, it's a choice, yes, but not, there have to be some limits because those stats of the suicide rate going up and those stats of all those other challenges were true. I mean, I went to go look it up at a different source. That was not quite Google, but they're true.
Jen, let's talk about those stats. I have it right in front of me. For girls age 15 to 19, there's been a 62% increase since 2009. We're talking about anxiety and depression. And the rates of teenagers trying to harm themselves has gone up. It's I think gone up by 150%. So if these are stats that are not alarming to people, that are parents especially, and it's just about hiding your data, that nobody gets your credit card information and can, go on a shopping spree and buy a car, it goes a lot deeper than that. Okay. It goes a lot deeper than just, a faulty healthcare system that needs to come up with a way to make extra money. When hospitals and when medical professionals are the ones that are seeing teenagers and they're treating anxiety and depression and suicide attempts and everything that comes along with it, there's a reason. And when it all points back to what we're saying, right, Jen? As parents, we have to step in and do something about that because we don't want to become a statistic.
Yeah.
So I don't care what the healthcare system is doing. I mean, I care as a human being, but all of us on this panel and everybody listening in right now and watching, this appeals to them in a certain way. We all have a hot button, right? Maybe we have two hot buttons. My hot button, number one, is I'm a parent. I have a 15-year-old and a 10-year-old. I see firsthand what I see, but we all have a hot button. And that's why we're all here to express how we feel about what triggers that hot button. I'm sorry, David, go ahead.
No, one piece around that. So I love time management. I'm a time management addict, but I love time management. I'm very respectful of the power of time management. One thing to keep in mind with this is the sheer number of decisions, because you can go to a robot and you can ask it a question 1,000,000 times and it feels zero fatigue from that. And one of the interesting pieces, so to go back to this platform, so over the course of that 11 months, we had 2 million users, but across those 2 million users, 2 million people in the United States who were impacted by this platform, using this platform, they had 19 billion interactions with this very, very simple algorithm that would totally polarize, because it's just looking at like the kind of content you're engaging with. It's of course going to see this person engages 100 times with sports things. They never engage with mountain biking things. I'm never going to show them mountain biking again. But it can look at that every time that person comes to it and look at that with kind of fresh eyes, look at the data that it has from the past. Whereas a person, if you ask a person the same thing 20 times, they're going to you have that concept of kind of emotional attrition, emotional intelligence, but also you're going to get worn down over time. And by showing people things, just, speaking in terms of that polarization in shades, moving them towards perhaps what you want them to eventually make the decision of, you can wear that down. And we as salespeople know, a lot of the time where you actually move forward with a prospect, it's the 5th to 12th contact. It's typically not, the very first time that you talk to a person that they take a meeting with you. or they buy something from you. A lot of the time, it's after you've worked with them again and again and again, and you've talked with them again and again and again. And to an extent, you've kind of worn them down, and maybe they've shared their real issues, and you're beginning to work towards that real solution. But it's worth noting that an algorithm doesn't get tired at all.
True story.
So Melissa Brodsky, I think it was, made a comment that she doesn't remember suicide rates in kids being as high as it was. Again, I'm not a parent, but here's what I do know. We have so much incredible, readily available information to us as human beings now than we ever have in the past. You want to know something about something? I wanted to Google at 4 o'clock what happened with Slack and Salesforce. I didn't get to it until 4:45, but I got it the second I did a search. And it's amazing how quickly I'm able to get that information. Everyone, children, all of it. Everyone has that ability to just pick up a phone, turn on a computer, turn on the television, and get that information at a second's notice. It's not even a minute anymore. It's a second. And so when information is that readily available, it will affect people. We're more polarized with politics than ever before. Families are more, polarized in conversations in general than ever before. People wonder why war is, so tragic. War has always been tragic, people. Like, if you don't think it was tragic back in World War II, you're wrong. I mean, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people died. And so it's just that we have that information at our fingertips now. We walk around with a computer in our pocket constantly. And that's part of the issue. But it's how you use it.
But it's much easier for us to control
absolutely.
that than it is for younger people.
Right. I agree.
I mean, you guys walk around. I'll take my sons to school, and every kid is walking around pretty much with their head down on their device. Like, these are kids that almost get hit by a car because they're not looking, they're not paying attention while they're crossing the street. My older son was telling me about how, how like when we would meet people and make new friends, we would swap phone numbers, we call each other. I'm not even talking about landlines. I'm not like saying like I'm a dinosaur back. I joke around about my age all the time. But the point is, even with cell phone numbers, you would think that kids would text each other, get to know each other one-on-one. They exchange each other's social media information. Like, yeah, find me on Snap, this, that, the other thing. How is that human? How is that getting to know people? There's jokes and memes about, actually sit across the table from one another at a meal and talk to each other like it's 1995. We've all seen that meme, right? Because we keep moving further and further away from who we are and what makes us human. We're not having conversations. We're not talking to each other. We're not picking up the phone. How many people are home right now, working from home, furloughed, whatever? People still get offended when their phone rings. You're home. What are you doing? Like, you should still text and email people when most of us are home right now during a pandemic. This is the time that we should be talking to each other and getting closer and reconnecting, especially with everything going on around us. But no, because of what you said, Christine, because things are so easy, because we can get information at our fingertips, literally, because it's much easier to text somebody or email them than to pick up the phone and have a human conversation. Because of all of this, we want everything that's just so easy and it's instant gratification. But yet, the more that we do that, the more we're moving away from what makes us who we are. And the crazy thing is, they said this in the documentary, that the brain, just in terms of evolution, it's pretty much the same as it's been for forever, right? But technology and what technology has done and how far technology has come has literally surpassed the brain's ability, like physiological ability, to do what it normally has done, what it's always done. And that is basically behave in such a way that, like, the neural pathways, it mimics that of an addict. So I just want to put that out there, because these are all things that are pulled right from the movie that all of this resonates. It really does. It makes a difference.
It resonated with me too.
Right?
That point here that we must instill values as our grandparents did, keep normalcy in our homes. So what, your friends have phones, so what? My 13-year-old is phoneless. You know, it's interesting. My kids don't have social media, you know, but they do play video games.
Yeah.
Right. So the other day, my daughter says she's playing Roblox and she's like, "Oh, I'm playing with my friends." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" Like, it didn't even occur to me that she was playing with her friends and that they, you know, then she could be playing with strangers and then she could be, you know, that, like, I'm like, wait, what? Hold up, hold the phone. What's going on here? But it's not just phones. It's not just, it's like just like Julie had posted something about Alexa earlier, you know, something about like, don't record me. I didn't want to say it out loud because, you know, my Alexa might be listening, right? And it's a reality that it's all around us.
Yeah, and especially so within this pandemic, especially in the last 3 months, and I'm sure it extends a little bit further back, but one of the organizations I work with, InfraGard, sends out, collaborates with the FBI, sends out notifications of trends, things that are changing, things that are happening. And one of the explosions that they've seen in the last few months in particular has been human trafficking here in the United States. And part of that is, I think, so many folks isolated, so many folks home, so many folks who have been laid off, that there has been a huge surge in child trafficking in the United States, especially in the last couple of months, and especially with some of the smaller social media apps. I think one was, I wish I could remember what it was called. I think it was like Peep or something like that, that is specifically targeted towards children. And they're seeing, you know, folks who are hopping on there, predators who are hopping on there and talking with kids. And, you know, it's right at arm's width or arm's distance.
Come on. Can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to get to my microphone, but I'm also like, all right, they can hear me, but it's all good. But so couple things to add. First thing, I think one interesting thing that popped out to me from the movie, to add on to what you were saying, David, was that like no one is challenging Mark Zuckerberg. Like no one's literally like, yo, let me go build the next Facebook. No one's like, let me go build the next Twitter, right? Like everyone is still, let me go build a SaaS product that'll hit 100 million ARR in 3 years to go sell off into the freaking races, right? That's the VC game that people are still playing, that I was a part of, that I've seen collapse, right? So like there's nobody challenging that, right? So that's first thing. Second thing, there's nobody that's going to solve this if there's nobody challenging the current champion, right? Like Roy Joe Jr., until he actually got challenged and, you know, someone was like, hey, I want to take down the champion. No one's going to try to take down the champion, right? And so I think one of the interesting things to see is like, oh, like what ideas do the kids have that are on the apps that they're using have to improve the safety and the governance of what they're doing, right? Because like, I'm sure no one's thought about this, but like, what if kids just decided to make a TikTok government and said, birds up to you parents, like you can't have access to anything we're doing because we spend all of our time here. And why should you tell us what we get to do on TikTok? And TikTok's like, yeah, kids, we're going to build a student TikTok, whatever. And then it's built. And then now that's how kids operate. Like we can't do anything at that point. And so I think it'll be interesting to start to see some of the new sort of thoughts that come out. And I'm happy to kind of share more of them. But I just sit here sometimes and I'm like, who the curse word let these people get this big? Right? Like I'm 7 years out of college, but I'm like, why did nobody else think like, yo, yeah, I might get addicted to this. So maybe like, let me put a limit on it. Right. Like when I put a time limit on my apps like 3 years ago, my friends were like, yo, what do you do? Bro, I can't get in your Facebook, Trav. I'm like, yeah, bro, because I've been on it for 15 minutes today. They're like, what? I'm like, you don't have timing on your things? And they're like, no. And I'm like, all right, I'm just going to go back to mute. So, yeah, those are just a few thoughts. But I think like if you're not paying for the product, then you are the product was one that hit me like, oh, whoa. like, I'm not paying for this. So that means they're trying to get me. Oh, they're making money off of me. Dang. All right.
.com 1.0. It was all about aggregating eyeballs. That was back in 95.
But you got to, the thing that's crazy to me too, like to Melissa's point in some of the comments, it never went through my mind to think that, like, yo, someone would sit behind a computer and be like, yo, how do I get African Americans to pay more attention to twerking on Instagram than I can to them paying attention in math class in 7th grade? How do I get that to happen? Oh, word? Okay. Like this is what's happening right now. Nobody's talking about how to solve for that, right? And no one's even talking about how kids are learning these days. Like, you could probably increase someone's reading comprehension through TikTok videos versus the way it's currently being done. So there's so many new approaches that haven't been explored yet. And I think there probably should be a parental government board or something put in place that like oversees, like, hey, like what sort of solutions are going to be put into effect? Obviously, the government isn't going to build, right? Like, we have the resources. Like, to your point, David, you built a $13 million freaking company with 2 engineers. Like, it's not about tech. It's about having a team and having a mission to solve it, right? And having people do it together, not like, oh, can you come save me from this technology because it's eating my like soul? And it's like, nah, nobody's gonna save you, fam. Like, you gotta save yourself.
My counter argument would be that if you take J.P. Morgan and move them to Sand Hill Road, and you take the robber barons and move them to the Valley, the 1880s are the 2020s. There's a handful of companies, there's a handful of industrialists, there's a handful of financiers that control everything. And we had Instagram. That was the big upstart. They got an audience. They took the younger kids out of Facebook. When did everybody start saying, if you're on Facebook, you're a grandparent? 5 years ago? And then Facebook bought them. There's nothing that's going to happen right now without government intervention that says, oh, you can't be a monopoly. Oh, you can't have complete immunity to whatever happens on your platform. The government has to step in to change course. The monetization guy did an interview with Al Franken on Sunday, and he brought that up. It's his point. Without somebody stepping in, nobody's going to stop these people from going on and on. And I think he was the one that also said, nobody's realistically tried to challenge Facebook in the last 5 years until Parler, because Parler's like, oh, well, we're going to give you free reign while Facebook and Twitter crack down. So without sort of government intervention, you're not going to see a competitor knocking these guys off their pedestals.
So Parler was the one that the FBI had issued an alert about. I think it was like maybe 4 weeks ago, where it had been being used for a tremendous amount of child human trafficking, unfortunately.
I thought that problem was on the left. It's on the right now? Okay, good to know.
Oh, it's totally right.
So I'm over here like, wait, are we talking about pizza? Are we talking about technology companies? What are we talking about?
Trafficking children out of their non-basements.
Yeah.
But I will also add that Parler was asking for people's social security numbers, and they recently got hacked. So I think to sign up or to be an influencer on something on that platform, you had to give your social security, and then they just had a huge data breach. So that was the latest update. I did also want to add really quickly on the note of twerk videos, those are quite popular, but social media has, just to throw in a quick benefit, it has provided a lot of people who were in marginalized or minority groups, has provided them with more visibility, more of a platform. I follow a lot of people on TikTok. I'm not great at TikTok. I think I'm too old to really catch on with that one, but I follow a lot of different content creators who are creating just a tremendous amount of content that highlights differences and diversity and inclusion. There's a young woman who is deaf, and she shares scenes from her life to help you understand what it's like to live with a disability. There are people who do share about like math and fun stuff like that. There's a young Black man who was he was taking other TikTok influencers' videos and trying to estimate their height just based on like, I guess, their, like the size of things in their room. It was really cool. I'm not a math whiz, but he was just very impressive with that. So I just wanted to add that in.
Yeah, and I would agree. You know, I've gotten a lot of value from social media. It's not all doom and gloom. You know, I enjoy LinkedIn. I enjoy going live on LinkedIn and bringing unique conversations and giving people a platform who don't typically do speaking events and share stories. I mean, and I really enjoy that. I enjoy having this opportunity to interact with people that I don't know. It's just like anything else. It's a tool, but where are the limits? Where are the idea that you don't necessarily know what the facts are. And how do we protect the kids from, going down this spiral of depression and anxiety and, in the terrible cases, suicide? I 100% agree that has to start at home with parent controls and deciding what is tolerated and what's not tolerated. 100%, that's my responsibility. But from a bigger picture, just because my kid is a little bit safer doesn't mean her best friend isn't, or her, it's a bigger problem.
When you were talking about just having kids like our age, right? I don't think this was clarified. I mean, it's kind of understood, but just in case if anyone doesn't fully understand, it's not just about kids using social media. It's it's all the cyberbullying. Like that's what it is. Jen, you and I, and I guess everyone on this panel, I'm sure we're all on LinkedIn. We got here through LinkedIn Live, right? We have the cognitive ability and we have the decision-making process that we can use, where if there are certain people, like their feeds, their profiles, we have the choice to walk away from that and still feel like a whole human being and get involved and divert our attention to something else that we're interested in, a hobby or something, somebody else in the profession that we want or that we're in, whatever. Kids, especially that 10 to 15 or even 10 to 20 age bracket, they're still forming and developing their sense of self. They're trying to figure out how they fit into the world that we live in right now. They're trying to figure it all out. And their level of comparison to their peers is way beyond ours, I'm sure. And so cyberbullying, like that, everything that everybody they're interacting with and everything that they are exposing themselves to at a younger and younger age, they don't understand like we do that there's a bigger world out there and that we have choices. They're looking at everything they see online. And if they don't fit the part, they think that they're defective. There was I remember this. I don't know this stat specifically, but plastic surgery and the rate of younger people inquiring about plastic surgery to look like the Kardashians and to look like they literally want to pay thousands of dollars to look exactly like their Snapchat filters and look like the Kardashians. That's a problem. We all are imperfect. All of us have flaws. But when kids now are holding themselves to that type of standard, and if they can't meet that standard, they're trying to cut themselves and they're attempting suicide. I see a problem with that. So it's not about gaming and getting addicted to gaming, and that's what's causing all the attempted suicides and depression and anxiety. It's the cyberbullying and the comparison game. So I just wanted to put that out there. And obviously I'm very passionate about it because, again, as a parent, it's disturbing.
Yeah, no, and I 100% agree with you. Very valid points. Now, we've already gone over time, and we only answered one question. But I think if we could just wrap it up and like everyone either say a takeaway or like a suggestion on how to be more create healthier habits for social media. So we'll just go around. I can tell you for myself, I turned off all my notifications, which was like awesome. So I only go to LinkedIn or Instagram when I want to. And that's when I see what's going on. And then I just could leave it alone. No pop-up things. It was really like, I love it now. So Christine, did you have something to share?
I'm actually shut everything off.
Can you pause and then restart your microphone, or is that just me?
I'm hearing it too.
Oh, we all hit the like super matrix slow motion.
Travis is getting, I can see it. Phone out of every. Get a call starting at 9. It doesn't come morning. And I now, it's like I'm not. Helps a lot.
Yeah.
Oh no, Christine, your audio dropped off the phone.
Yeah, I don't know. There's like a feedback coming from somewhere.
I can hear you, Travis. Okay.
Yeah.
Am I good?
I don't know what was going on with Christine. I'm sorry, Christine. We just couldn't. You were coming in like slow motion, Darth Vader, and it was funny, but not at all what we were going for. Sorry, Lydia, did you have something?
Yeah. So I thought it was very interesting that all of the guys that were interviewed universally said that they do not let their kids have phones. They severely limit their online time, and they don't have social media accounts. So in the interview with that I posted, Nir talks about it's about accountability and control, and there's 4 strategies for better managing your exposure to social media and the social dilemma. They're number 1, master internal triggers. 2, making time for traction. 3, this is really interesting, hack back external triggers. In other words, turn off notifications and alerts and limit your time. And prevent distractions with pacts. You make agreements with yourself that you are going, okay, I'm going to sit down and write for an hour and stick to that pact. And it helps you strengthen your self-discipline.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I'm a big fan of calendar blocking and that time blocking and time management piece. And I do that in my life.
I didn't look it up, but he talked about this app on his phone called Forest. And it's a project timer. And if you veer away from your project, when you start it, this little tree is planted and it grows. And it grows as long as you stick to your project time. But if you interrupt it, the tree dies.
Oh, geez.
Just, whatever works for you. If it's a tomato plot, then great. If it's a little tree growing in the middle of the forest.
Oh, no. That's a new way to kill trees. David.
Reminds me of Pomodoro, the Pomodoro method, where you focus on something for 25 minutes. So yeah, I mean, I would echo a lot of what they said in Social Dilemma in terms of what you can do. If you can, delete those accounts. If you can, especially on your mobile phone, get rid of as many apps as you can, because so many of them are used as aggregates for tracking. If you can, use grayscale on your phone. I think that might have been part of what Christine was trying to say. Like, you have times where you can't use your phone. I set my phone to grayscale. It might actually already, no, not quite yet. I have mine set to grayscale after 8 o'clock. So whatever I'm on will kind of block out. Oh, Christine, it seems like there's some echo from the side. And then, of course, like turning off your notifications, I think is an excellent, excellent recommendation, and limiting how much time you spend on apps. I love what Travis was doing there, where you limit Facebook to 15 minutes, or you limit it to 15 minutes and you set a calendar block for like, this is when I'm going to check my things. I love calendar blocking, like Jen was saying, like Lydia was saying, and I block everything out. I block out all my mental health stuff. I block out all my work stuff. I block out all my physical health stuff, because you want to make sure that you're making time for the things that are good, and that you're cognizant of the things that are potentially detracting.
Yeah, I think those are some really good points. It's all about eliminating the distractions. I thought Michelle's comment here, though, was funny. While the tree is collecting info. LOL. Jonathan, did you have any final thoughts or suggestions to share?
Oh, my little sunshine view in the world. I think, most of us are Gen X, maybe Dave squeaks out, and Chantel and Travis, but on the closer to Gen X side of things, I think we've got a fighting chance to do some of these discipline things that everybody's talking about. For everybody else, write your congressperson, call your congressperson, step up and talk, because it's, even Gen X and older, just not being able to discern Walter Cronkite and Dan Rather from your social news feed, that's a problem. All the way down to kids getting into this today. Like it's a problem. It doesn't, our phones don't function like our brains. It's been brought up by multiple people. It's beyond social. It's just our entire interaction with this universe. Final fun thought, watch Mark Maron's End Times Fun. About 40 minutes in, there's a 5-minute clip where he's like, you guys don't even know how to stand in line. You couldn't stand in line for 5 minutes. And he goes on and he covers like 20 things from the early 80s, like calling people to be like, hey, who's the peanut guy? I got to know who the peanut guy, who's the peanut, call me back, and he can't look it up on his phone. And so try to have self-control. I'm a big supporter of that, but, be active with everybody else, your kids, your elected officials, to move the needle. We're going to have to get everybody to move the needle.
By the way, is a shining beacon on Twitter. If you don't follow him, you should.
Oh, he's great. And he's at his Instagrams in the mornings now, which I want to watch, but at the same time, my hot take on Michelle's take about aggressive bullying behavior, I think LinkedIn is on the tipping point of becoming a passive-aggressive bully pulpit network.
I love that, what you just said, Jonathan, because I was just going to add that on top of all this, and Chantel, you kind of brought this up, people in 2020 don't call enough people out for their bull. Are we allowed to curse?
Yeah.
Yeah.
People don't call each other out for their bullshit because it's on LinkedIn. So I try not to curse, but it is what it is. But because what happens is I'll see something, right? And I'll just bring the typical Travis, and people that know me know that I'm just like, hey, what? This makes zero sense, right? And I think not enough people have been checked in these places, right? So going to corporate America and be like, all y'all said y'all vote and live D&I. Vote it. I put it on my website. Our CEOs live the values. We even did a survey last quarter, and our management team said we got 25% increased engagement from these bullshit surveys we sent. So nobody's questioning whether or not these companies that are saying they're doing everything, they're marketing that they're doing everything, and no one's questioning whether or not they're actually doing what they said they're going to do. So I just think overall accountability is something that it just needs to come out, because if LinkedIn turns into this passive aggressive thing, like you mentioned, John, I'm not going to be up on here trying to engage with people, because I'm like, no one's going to even believe what I say, even if I am telling the truth, because then it's just going to turn to a bunch of fluff. And I'm like, I just got to go somewhere else to deliver my message now.
I'll follow you, Travis.
Thanks, Michelle.
I'll follow you. I will, because, we don't have time for that. But Jen knows, as far as getting behind, and Christine, getting behind women in sales and women in the workplace and everything else that comes along with it, and diversity and inclusion. We don't stop. We don't back down. We don't care. And for someone who came out of corporate after 20 years to become a coach and walk away from all that BS, I'll be the first one to stand on the mountaintop and shout it loud. So anyway, my only takeaway is Tristan Harris, who was like the one person in the documentary that I loved because he, like the Atlantic magazine said, he was the only one that really came out of Silicon Valley that had a conscience. He was the former design ethicist from Google. He started a movement, you know, and there's a website. And I remember I was so moved by it myself after watching it that, of course, I looked him up. He doesn't have an account on LinkedIn. You know, he doesn't have a profile. He's not on social media. He's on his own platform, but he started something called humanetech.com, HUMANETECH.com. So there's a lot of amazing tips and pointers and things that, you know, discussions that you could start with students in schools, with your children, with each other in communities. And my only advice is if you're really moved by this documentary and you want to continue the movement somehow, locally, globally, whatever, but you want a piece in it and move the needle, check out humanetech.com because there's a lot of great information there. You can sign up for their newsletter also, which I've done, and it's been very helpful. So.
Yeah, you can also go to the Social Dilemma, just like this was a registered event through them. You can do that for schools. They provide you all of these resources when you do that. There's like guides and what to bring to schools and how to present the information, and all of that is there to just create more awareness. So Travis, any suggestions, takeaways?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to give Christine a part of mine because I felt really bad that we couldn't hear you. So I wanted to give you like a piece of mine and then share my technology, like how I see people, especially now that kids now all want to be influencers, and that's actually a career path that you have to convince them that they shouldn't or should not do. And then I'll end with kind of like how people can develop healthy relationships. So Christine, can we hear you? Damn, sorry. We were having to go in the comments. Oh, sorry. I was trying to do it.
Christine, make sure you put your final thoughts in the comments. Okay, so or
just record it on your iPhone and then send it to us later. Like either way.
Yeah, Darth Vader thing is really cool though.
But so the first thing I was gonna say about the social media thing, I don't know about any of you, but I love when I look back to Facebook from like 2012 and I see some like dope shit that I posted and I'm like, yo, you were on something. And so back then I just used it as a tool to motivate my friends, and it would always be a thing like, oh, Trav's on with his motivational stuff again. But like that was me. And I never once thought like, oh, I shouldn't show up to not do a motivational thing because someone's going to think it's stupid, but show up because there are people that actually needed it on that Tuesday at 7:30 when you were walking your dog and you got pooped on, because that's just what dogs do, right? So I think one of the things is being like, hey, like change your mindset of what you think social media is, right? Like if I told you that there was a prescription that you could sign up for that every day at 7:00 you had to let out how you felt to it, and it was called Instagram, you'd be like, oh shit, like sign me up, right? Like, oh, it helps me stay healthy. I get out the things that are bottled up inside of me, and this is how I'm supposed to use it. It's called Instagram, it's called TikTok, and it's called LinkedIn. You get to pick 3, but you only get to use 1 a day, right? Like you choose. And then the second piece about the willpower and how we can use technology to develop healthy relationships, I think it's going back to this whole idea of how do we leverage technology to live better lives, right? Like I have a microphone in front of me, I've got 3 screens here, and I've got another 2 phones, but I try to get the best use out of all of them, right? Like I've got a new Apple Watch that I've added to the mix now that it's going to keep track of other things. But for me, I'm now starting to figure out like what questions have not been asked as it relates to human productivity, right? Like, am I more productive if I have Alexa behind my computer during the workday because she can play Spotify? Or should I not be in a room with Alexa? Like all of these little tiny things that can change how people enhance their days, how people learn. So think back to how you can use technology in a different way, and then also think about how you can use it to actually benefit your day to day. That rhymed. I'm out.
Yeah, those are some really great points. I have Christine's comments. So she turned off notifications. She set major limits on her phone. No apps except calls and texts from 9 p.m. to 6:30 a.m. So those are Christine's action items.
Sorry, and one more thing on the apps. One hack that I didn't spend enough time with, but I definitely want to do more of. You can change on the new, for the iPhone users out there, you can change the icons of Facebook. So you could literally make Facebook not Facebook in like a notebook page, and you can customize it, right? So if you just want to feel love, you can change it to love literally and change the icon so you can get rid of the branding. It's like, I'm a huge fan of doing those sorts of things, like changing the Google Calendar to a blank calendar and removing branding away from everything. So you're not like, oh, I got to get back to Facebook. So one more hack for people.
That's interesting. I hadn't considered that, but that's really interesting. Thank you for sharing. Chantel, did you have any takeaways or suggestions for healthier social media?
I'll keep it super short since I think everybody pretty much covered it, but I know we focused a lot of the conversation on the effects on children. I think there are just as many negative effects on adults. Loneliness, depression, mental health issues just as prevalent among older adults as well. And I think that a lot of times younger generations are looking at the older ones and seeing the behavior that's taking place on a lot of these platforms, and it's not setting the best model. Especially on Facebook, which has a reputation of encouraging that type of behavior. So if you, I guess for anyone who's watching, or even for all of us, maybe we should think about how we behave and how we present ourselves online. Even if we have an anonymous account or it's Facebook or whatever, we're passionate about it. And just remember that kids are watching and we're setting an example.
That's an excellent point. Modeling good behavior, because how do you expect kids to have good social media behavior if you don't? That's a really excellent point. Thank you for sharing. Thank you all for joining me. I'm so glad we had this conversation. I love having unique conversations on LinkedIn, and that the platforms afforded me to do that. And I think that's pretty amazing. But thank you. I really appreciate it. We have some comments. I'm going to go ahead and respond to some of the folks in the comments just because I feel like we didn't cover all of them. And there were so many great comments from the audience. And I think they all, there was some great stuff to check out. If you guys have some time to respond to some of the stuff that people were posting about. But thank you, everyone, for joining us. We went well over time, but I think it was a good conversation. Hopefully, you all got something out of it and the audience got something out of it. I really am grateful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for the thoughts, and thanks Jen for putting this on.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. Thanks
Happy
everyone.
Fantastic.